Hey everyone, Tina Hogan Grant here with my Cuppa A Natter that I like to do twice a month on a Monday. I like to bring authors into my home. We talk about books, writing, life as an author, and whatever comes to mind. And this evening, donalee Moulton is joining me all the way from Canada. How are you this evening?
Wonderful. Thank you. And it is evening here. It's 9 o'clock, so you may see some darkness out
I
behind me.
do. So you are 4 hours ahead of me because it is 5 o'clock here. So you're 4 hours ahead of me. But I'm excited to talk to you. We've had this book for quite a while, and I'm intrigued to hear more about your books. But before we get started, can you just give me a little background on you? Anything you want to share with the rest of the world?
Perfect. Look, thank you. And delighted to be here. So my background is in two related fields. My background is in journalism. I was a freelance journalist for many, many years. And I also had my own communications company. So I did all the standard websites and brochures and media training and all those wonderful things. But it was all about messages and language and making sure that we were saying things clearly and that we were interesting the people that we were trying to deliver those messages to. So it led naturally into writing nonfiction books and now into writing fiction and poetry and anything else that doesn't have an immediate deadline and an editor looming over me.
Wow, I love that. And you are in Canada. So pretty much most of your life, you've had a passion for writing.
Absolutely, yes, I would say. What I didn't know, and it would be interesting to hear from your listeners on this, what I didn't understand when I was younger, so I would write short stories, or I would write poems, or I would write essays, and love it. And when I was in university, I worked on the university newspaper, but I didn't know that you could make a living as a writer. Because when I thought writer, I thought book writer and fiction, and wasn't sure quite how that would translate into a career. So what I found was the parallel to that, the journalism and the communications, which let me write, but also let me pay the mortgage.
Oh, there you go. And then freelance writing.
Yes, absolutely.
Do a lot of freelance?
And that my whole career was freelance. And the beauty of that now, I've discovered, is that you don't get to write a story as a freelance journalist unless you sell the idea. So I was very used to selling ideas and pitching ideas and writing query letters, and that was just second nature. So when I moved into other forms of writing, it was easier for me, I think, to adjust to that marketing mindset. Not that I love it, but that I appreciate it's essential to the process.
Yeah, it's a completely different market. And with freelancing, the query letting, the inquiries, I mean, you don't actually have a job per se until they accept your query letter. And that's got to be really difficult because, I mean, I'm sure the competition is huge. You're not the only one. Like if you're doing an article for some magazine, you have to really grab their attention.
You get very creative, but many of the things that we're told about writing short stories and writing books, know the market, for example. Before you pitch to a publisher, know what that publisher publishes. Read some of the books that they've published. Get familiar with their catalog. All of those things would apply to freelance journalism as well. The other thing is that, and I discovered this when I wrote my first mystery book, was when I thought of publishers, I thought of the 10 publishers that I read most often. When I started to look for publishers, I realized, no, there's 10,000 of them.
And there is a lot of smaller ones.
Absolutely. And they're excellent and they're good quality. In the same way with freelance journalism, you think, well, I'm going to write about this crisis, or I'm going to write about this hot issue, or I'm going to investigate a particular situation. But you also found out that there's a great call for things like trucking magazines need writers. I did a lot of writing in the cannabis sector.
Oh, wow.
I know. Yeah. It had nothing to do with smoking it or eating it. It had to do with the fact that it was a business.
Oh,
and because Canada, I believe, was the second country in the world to legalize cannabis across the country. So it's perfectly legal here in every place that you can visit.
Wow.
I know.
I mean, with the internet, now that we have the internet, I'm sure it makes the research, the queries, everything a lot easier, because I'm sure a lot of these places will take emails. You don't have to pop everything in the mail and print it and all this stuff.
The other thing that's happened because of the internet is that content is king. So if you've got a publication, if you've got a site, you have to have fresh material on that site all the time. So there's this voracious appetite for content. So you have more places than ever before to sell your ideas to. Because there is such a voracious appetite, though, competition is stiffer, but the pay is not necessarily as great as it used to be, right? It's more about volume and turnaround and speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And you say about the content has to be fresh, and that's what you hear all the time on social media. Post every day, post every day. I mean, for me, where I lack is my website. I have a website, but I don't keep, I mean, the last time I posted was my new book that just came out. So it's not like it's months and months gone by, but it's been at least a month. I'm not very good at keeping my website. How often are you supposed to do a website? You can't put stuff on there every day. Well, I guess you could. If you had a blog, I guess you could.
Well, and you raised the important issue of what is it that I'm communicating? Am I communicating something that's going to be relevant, of interest, different? If I'm just repeating the same thing over and over, then the frequency of which I post, doesn't matter, because people are going to lose interest and they're going to go somewhere else.
You have to spice it up. You have to, shake it up a little bit.
You have to make them want to read it. Like, just to your point, as with a good book, just having the book isn't enough. You actually have to have something inside the book that's
content. And you got to keep, the story flowing. And the one good tip I got when I started writing was, in each chapter, the chapter has to move forward somehow, and the reader has to learn something in that chapter. A chapter could never, ever just be a fill. It has to move forward, whether it just be getting from A to B, but the reader has to move forward in a chapter and learn something in that chapter to keep the story going.
It's an important point, because I think readers are very sophisticated, and if we bog them down, if we're using dialogue to get across information in a way that sounds stilted, if we're repetitive, they will quickly lose interest and move on to something else. So we really do have to be on our game.
And what as a reader, because I love to read too, as well as write, what gets me to put a book down is too much fill.
Yeah.
Too much fill. I love the description of the scenery. I love the description, of the skies, whatever, but limit it. Readers have imaginations too. Give a brief detail of the sky or the weather, but please don't give me a whole page of what the hillside looks like.
I'm the same way. And I think in part, I've always believed that, especially for mysteries, we've got two kinds of readers. We've got the readers who like the plot. So that's me. I like the puzzle. I like the clues. I like figuring out who did it. I like to see if I can get the answer ahead of having the answer revealed for me. But for many readers, it's about character, and it's about what they're feeling and what they're doing. And while I enjoy that, it's not the paramount reason that I'm attracted to a good mystery book.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to take a pause. We have a lot of people joining us. I want to acknowledge our readers. Again, I am here this evening talking to donalee Moulton. We are talking about her book, Conflagration. Did I say that right?
Perfect.
Before we get into the book, let me acknowledge the readers. If you have any questions for donalee, go ahead and put them up in the comments, and I will get to as many as I can. But let's see who's here. I'll pop them up. We have Karen is here. She says, good evening. Then we have Belinda. We have Virgie. And I was just on a couple hours ago doing a solo live, and these sweet readers were with me too. Darlene Johnson is here. Hi, Darlene. Belinda says, interesting career. Renee is here. Hello, Renee. Good to see you. Barbara is here from Florida. I see a couple of questions, but I'm going to get into those in just a minute. Janet is here. Hey, Janet, good to see you. Cassandra is here. Then we have Lisa. Few more. Let's see. We got Cindy. We got quite a few people joining us. I love this. And Kathy. And Tina. Okay. All right, donalee, let's talk about this book of yours. The Conflagration. My first question is, how do we come up with that title? And let's see the beautiful cover too.
There used to be I taught in university. I taught communications in university for a number of years, and there used to be a joke that came up often in some of the textbooks. This poor little bugger is running through an office, and he's flapping his arms, and at the top of his lungs he's yelling conflagration, conflagration, and absolutely no one is moving. And in the very last box of the cartoon, he yells fire. And so the whole message is, don't use the big fancy language when you can say it plainly and simply so that people understand it. So in some ways, the title violates that rule. But this book is a historical mystery. It's set in 1734, and it's about a fire that burned the lower town of Montreal to the ground. So the merchant quarter, totally decimated, no buildings left standing. And so I wanted a title that captured the essence of the fire, but sounded 1734-ish, sounded a little old-fashioned.
I had to say it a few times before we went live to make sure I got it right. It's a totally new word to me. Can we see the cover of the book?
Absolutely.
Now, is this a standalone?
This book is a standalone for me, but it is part of a series of historical mysteries put out by my publisher, BWL Publishing, out of Alberta. And so there is a historic mystery for every province and territory in Canada. And I was asked to do the Quebec book. I'm not from Quebec. My province is Nova Scotia. Quebec is our French province, our predominantly French province. So my publisher unexpectedly lost her Quebec writer. And she asked me if I would be interested in writing the book. And I always joke because I say, so I'm not from Quebec. I don't speak French, and I do not write historical mysteries, right? So I said to her, well, sure, why not? I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right?
Yeah, because I wanted to check. I mean, I love historical fiction, mystery, whatever, romance. I love historical. As an author, I'll never write historical because of the research.
Yes, it's daunting. It's truly daunting.
What I want to ask you, how was the research for this book? You've never written historical fiction. And as knowing our readers, my readers, especially you guys, they will call you out on anything that's not accurate. So for me, that would petrify me.
This is my second mystery. So my first mystery, Hung Out to Die, which actually features the CEO of a cannabis corporation. There you go. So my first mystery, to your point, was me. I could make up virtually anything. He could be as tall as I wanted. He could be as loud as I wanted. He could be as charming as I wanted. He could live in a house that I made up. All of that went out the window with Conflagration. But the situation that the publisher wanted the mystery to be built around was the story of an enslaved Black woman, Marie-Joseph Angelique, who was accused of starting this fire. And because it was a court case, every aspect of this story is documented. So all the trial transcripts exist, all the witness statements exist, all the writs trying to round up and arrest people connected to the fire. They're all preserved and in the Montreal archives. And at least one site has taken the French, because they're all in French. At that time, Montreal would have been part of France. They've been translated into English. So a lot of the work was done, which was a little reassuring. You had more than one location, reputable location that you could rely on for the court information. But to your point, there are things you don't think about. I had my character get up one morning and go and make a cup of coffee. And I thought, did they drink coffee in 1750?
Everything you have to question. You have to question everything. And that's what petrifies me. I love to read it. And I admire the authors, including yourself, that took the time to do the research and make sure it was correct. And there's a book that always sticks in my head. My dad was an author. He wrote science fiction. But one of the books that he wrote, The Prophecies Operation, it was a book about how the world would be today if Hitler won the war, which is really a scary thought. But he had to research everything. And he spent 2 years researching that book. 2 years. And that is like, wow. So how long did it take you to do the research for this book before? Did you do the research while you were writing or before?
I gave myself about 2 months just to immerse myself in the topic. So not trying to kind of document anything, not trying to itemize anything, not trying to kind of figure out how things would work, but just trying to get a feel for 1734, for New France in 1734, for slavery in Canada, which is a new concept for Canadians. This is not something we talk about. And then I started to connect research to how my story might unfold. Because it was part of a series, and the series was coming out with one book a month over a period of slightly more than a year, I had a deadline in place. So I had about 7-8 months in total to put it all together. So it was pretty intense, but at the same time, there was a lot of reputable documentation that I could rely on to be accurate because of the source.
Yeah, because you also have to get the clothes down, what they wore back then. And back to your comment, did they drink coffee?
They did.
Oh, they did? Okay.
They drank more tea than coffee. Tea was the more popular of the two, but coffee was around.
Yeah. Coffee was around? That's good to know. Do you think you'll write another historical mystery?
I think if my publisher comes back with this series again and asks me to write one, I would definitely say yes. If left to my own devices and I went to write another mystery at this time, I think I would probably not lean towards a historical mystery.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. You said there's historical figure. Is there anything else you want to add as far as the description of the book goes? Give the readers a little insight without, of course, giving too much away.
I will say, and thrilled to say it, that the book just won the 2024 Daphne du Maurier Mystery Suspense Award for historical fiction. So that was, well, you know, and it's one, to your point about the nervousness and the responsibility you fear getting wrong, right? That what if I make an error? What if I'm incorrect? What if I have a fact that can't be supported? So those kinds of verification of the quality of the work become important because it lets you know that you took the risk and the risk paid off. And so I'm very appreciative of things like that.
Yeah. And when did this book come out?
This book came out just before the holidays. So December 2023, it really did not kind of become available until 2024, but technically its release date is late. Yeah, it is.
And prior to this book, do you have any other published work?
I do. Years ago, a colleague and I, again, it was a commissioned work. Another publisher asked us to do, they were launching a new series of books for the American market. And they wanted books that could be read quickly and easily if you were taking a flight somewhere, if you were commuting on a train every day. And so she and I did a book called Celebrity Court Cases that looked at famous trials. Bill Clinton, Michael Jackson, those kinds of things. And then a decade after that, I followed it up with a book called The Thong Principle, saying what you mean and meaning what you say. And that's the communications side of the work that I did. So that's all about how do we speak and write clearly and carefully and make sure that we're getting across the message that we intended.
I like that. I mean, the celebrity case one sounds really interesting. What's the name of that one again?
It's called Celebrity Court Cases, Trials of the Rich and Famous. Now, it is now effectively out of print. You can still get it, but my publisher, that publisher has gone the way of many publishers. The Thong Principle came out in 2018, 2019, and then I wrote my first full-length fiction mystery called Hung Out to Die.
Congratulations. Now, is that a standalone also?
It is. It's interesting because the main character in that book is called Riel Brava, and the top of the book says a Riel Brava mystery #1. So I get frequently asked, where is #2?
Yeah.
And I keep saying, yep, yeah, that's coming. That's, yeah, I don't know when, but
it's tough when you start a series. It's the readers are going to anxiously wait for that next one. They really are. They really are. And speaking of readers, let's take a little break and see what's going on with our readers here and the comments they've been leaving. I'm going to scroll up a little bit, and I'm just going to start clicking and see what we have. Belinda says, I love historical mystery. This is going back to the conversation we just had. Belinda also says, awesome cover. Cassandra says, I love the cover. I'm going to pop this up. What is the first book you wrote? So out of the books you mentioned, which was the first one?
The very first book that I ever wrote, I co-wrote with a wonderful friend of mine, and that was Celebrity Court Cases. And that was about 2005, 2006. And then I went back to life for some reason and didn't think about writing a book, like I say, for another decade.
Okay. The court case one, do you think you'll republish it, a second edition ever?
I don't know. It's interesting because for that book focused on individual trials. So it was very much like freelance journalism. So this chapter was devoted to Bill Clinton. This chapter was devoted to Martha Stewart. This chapter was devoted to Winona Ryder. And so in some ways, it was an easy book to divide among two writers. And for both of us with backgrounds in journalism, it was easy to research and to write a single chapter devoted to their trial. That information, while it's still 100% accurate, O.J. Simpson, for example, has since died. He would be in that book. So it would need some updating. And I think right now there would be more famous trials that have occurred since then. So rather than reprint those ones, I would probably go with new ones.
Updated trials.
Yeah.
There you go. How about true crime? I mean, like murder mysteries that are true or based on true murders or unsolved mysteries. Do you ever delve into that genre or think about that?
In some ways, because my background is journalism and I'm very comfortable with nonfiction, it's a logical place for me to land. And I know that there's tremendous interest in them.
Yeah.
I think that they, to your point about research, especially if the crimes are relatively current, there would be an extensive list of interviews that would have to be conducted.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you could get them.
Yeah.
And I think it also
classified documents that can't be released, especially pending cases or even unsolved cases. I'm sure they don't just release records to anybody.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm in Canada, which has laws that are in some ways very similar to US laws, but also has laws that are very different from US law. So depending on who the readership is, some things may or may not make sense either.
That's very true. That's very true. But Lisa says, she's in Ontario. Lisa Willow is in Ontario. Hi, Lisa. And these comments are going back a little bit. Kathy says, isn't French a common language and history of Canada?
Absolutely. Canada is nationally a bilingual country. So federally, we are French and English. Provincially, we are not. There is only one province in Canada that is officially bilingual, and that's New Brunswick. And New Brunswick is joined between Nova Scotia and Maine. All the other provinces are unilingual, but a province like Quebec is going to be extensively French language.
Oh, I just learned something new. I love these chats. I go away a little bit smarter. Karen says, I praise you for taking on this book. That was quite a challenge. That you took it on, never ever writing any kind of historical fiction, let alone a mystery before.
Part of it is the ignorance is bliss thing, right? that you get a quarter of the way through it and you think, oh dear Lord, what have I done? But now you're into it and you're obligated to do it.
Committed.
We many years ago, I had a woman who worked with me, and I don't play hockey, and I know there's a puck and a net, and Canada's big on hockey and things, but we got a call from a company that said, we have artificial ice and we really need someone to do some promotion, marketing, brochures, that kind of stuff. Do you think Donalee would do something like that? And Janet, who was working with me at the time, said, I can't speak for Donalee. She's not in the office at the moment, but I will tell you, I don't think I've ever heard her say no. So part of it is you say, okay, why not? I'll take it on. And at some point, if it really isn't going well, I will have to acknowledge that. But it kind of commits you further to the project.
I admire you for taking on the challenge, because I would have just gone that way. I couldn't do it. So my hat's off to you. Belinda says Nova Scotia is gorgeous.
Thank you.
I'm going to go totally off topic while I'm browsing the comments. We had talked about this before we went live. Your name, Donalee, is spelled with a small d. And I would like to know how that came about.
My name is not an easy name because it's Donalee, and it's all one word. So people want to put two N's. They want to spell Lee, Lea, or Leigh. They want to hyphenate it. But once anybody knows that there's no capital they never forget that. They always get that right. And I would love to give you a riveting story about why there is no capital letter on my name. I contend that my mother, bless her heart, wanted to get on my nerve. And so she started to lowercase my name just to drive me nuts. She, when she was alive, bless her, she contended that when I was in about grade 2, we learned proper nouns and I couldn't understand them. So I refused to be one. And so, but I don't know if your school experience was this way, but for elementary and what some people call middle school, right through to junior high, I was in school with a large number of the same kids day in and day out. Mm-hmm. So once, whatever reason, my name became lowercase, everybody started spelling it with a lowercase. And when I was in about grade 9, I didn't want to be the weird kid with the no capital, right? So I started to capitalize my name, but all of my classmates kept it lowercase. So I said, okay.
Yeah, because I questioned it when I got your info. And no, it's spelled with a small d. So I like it. I've never seen that before, so I had to bring it up and ask.
Yeah. And if people say to me, how do you spell your name? I don't make a point of saying it's got a small d, unless, of course, it's something that's going to appear in print, and then it needs to be.
Is it on your book in a capital? It is with a capital on your book.
All lowercase. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great story. I mean, I was wondering, why is it with a small d? But you just answered the question. So thank you so much. And people are pulling. Karen says, your name spelling is unique. Belinda says, I love your name. First name I've ever seen all lowercase letters. Very interesting. Your book, forgive me, Conflagration. You're in Canada. Of course, I know it's available here in the US.
Yes.
Now, is it printed wide in the US or directly through Amazon?
In Canada, there is a distributor, and my publisher would go through that distributor. In the US, she would be going through the main sites. She would be going through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through those kinds of sites where people could easily access a book. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. And do you ever come to the US?
Yes. In fact, I was just in Vermont in May.
Oh, good.
Yeah. No, all the time. And I'm hoping to get to California. We have relatives. My husband has a brother and family in the US, so we get to the US a fair bit.
Oh, what part of California?
Well, they're in Santa Barbara. His son is in Santa Barbara.
That's only an hour and a half away from me.
I'm coming. They live in Ohio, but we tend not to meet in Ohio because California is just.
And my editor is in Santa Barbara too. We should all just have lunch in Santa Barbara.
I like it.
Yes. So when you're in California, look me up.
For sure.
I'd love it. Donalee, this is where the readers get excited because when I tell them that you are going to be reading from your book.
Perfect.
So I am going to be quiet and hand it over to you, and you can take it away.
Thank you. And I'm going to read from a very early part of the book. So the situation that occurred is that there is a fire. It spreads very rapidly. It spreads throughout what is called the lower town of Montreal. And by the time it's over, the lower town, where the business community at that time existed, was basically decimated. There was nothing left. So what I want to read is just the part where the town realizes that there's a fire and it's spreading. And so my main character's name is Philippe Archambault, and he works in the court system. He's not high up in the court system. He's a court reporter, but you're going to see the fire through his eyes. All right. The soldiers are beating a warning on drums that can be heard throughout the streets. Soon troops are running through town with buckets, ladders, shovels. The town crier can be heard in the distance. He says only one word over and over and over: fire. My boots are on and I am heading out the door. It is the law. All able-bodied men must report to the scene of the conflagration to assist. I take a cloth to wrap around my mouth. The smoke is starting to fill the streets, and it will be intense the closer I get to the blaze. I turn to kiss my wife, Madeline, goodbye. She has a shawl on. Where are you going? I ask. With you, she says. Absolutely not. You can't fight a fire. But I can, she says, help those in distress. With that, my wife and my unborn child are out the door and heading down Rue Saint-Antoine. I looked at her retreating back, proud and perturbed. We follow the crowd, the drums, and the voice of the town crier to Rue St. Paul. The street is in flames. The de Maurier house is consumed. It was only yesterday I stood inside that home, admired its design and its furniture, spoke with its owner. We form a brigade. Bucket after bucket after bucket of water is passed and poured on houses that line both sides of the street, to no avail. In less than 3 hours, it is over. The fire has won. More than 40 homes are gone, reduced to black ash, burnt stubs of wood, and tar from the water that was tossed everywhere in a futile attempt to squelch the flames. Also burnt to the ground, again, is the convent and the hospital. The sisters who run the convent and hospital are outside helping those who have sought refuge. A few buildings remain to offer sanctuary, including a private courtyard, a small chapel, and a garden. People gather here at what is often considered to be the heartbeat of Montreal. Mercifully, no one is seriously hurt. No one has died. But families are without homes, their servants and slaves displaced, businesses destroyed. I see the panny slave from the de Maurier house and the servant girl who answered the door. They are drinking tea. Others are drinking sweetened brandy. They all look past me. Neighbors and nuns are handing out blankets and offering comfort. Fortunately, the night is mild, wrapped now in a layer of damp smoke. I look from across the street at the human remnants of the fire, at the sisters who scurry to lend aid, at the neighbor woman who holds a child while its mother consoles another. I lock eyes with the neighbor woman through the heavy haze. I know those eyes. They belong to my wife. We start to make our way home slowly. Our bodies are heavy. Our hearts carry the same load. I have never experienced a fire like this. We have been warned, of course, but those warnings pale in comparison to the reality. There is solace only in knowing that we did all we could as a community. I wonder, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, if we did all we legally could have done. But that is a question for another time. Now is the time to mourn what has been lost. I hold Madeline's hand. We are about to leave Rue St. Paul behind us when we hear the banging of the drums. Francois Roy, the town crier, has an announcement. It is perhaps more devastating than the debris and ash that surrounds us. Marie-Joseph Angelique, he calls, black slave of Therese de Francheville, set the town of Montreal on fire. Before there is time to think, to absorb this news, a man in the hospital courtyard turns to the slave woman at the center of the firestorm. He too accuses her of setting the fire, insists everyone knows this. I see people nod their heads. I anticipate there will be trouble. There isn't. Marie-Joseph Angelique confronts her accuser. There is no vacant stare, no deference here. No one, she says, would be so stupid as to light their own home on fire. There is merit in the argument. I wonder if it is an argument that would win out in a court of law. I will soon find out.
Wow. Very good. I can see why this book won an award. Beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Beautiful.
And a tremendously gripping story in and of itself. 3 hours, and she is accused of arson, and she will be jailed within 24.
The point of view, is it through this character through the whole book?
Yes.
Through the whole book.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I want to put up some of the comments after your reading. Let's see. Let me work out. We got Karen says intriguing. Brenda says interesting. Karen says interesting. Belinda, love it. Awesome. Tammy Powell, sounds like a good story. Darlene, very interesting. Thank you so much for that read. Dana says she loves live readings. I'm intrigued. That was wonderful. With the book I know you said is available paperback and ebook. Trying to get this comment off. How about paperback and ebook? How about audio? Is it available?
Not yet. It is my hope that my publisher is moving into audiobooks, but not there yet. Okay. It takes time. I mean, I don't know how long I've been working on my books to get audio, and I'm still not there. So I totally get it. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. Now let's talk a little bit about your writing techniques. You said this book takes you like 7 to 8 months is that just to do the research or research and writing? In this case, the deadline was given to me because it was part of a series coming out, so there couldn't be a break in the monthly rollout of the series. And I do work well to deadline because that is my background. I'm very comfortable with being given a deadline and having to meet it. And because as a freelance journalist, the one thing you don't want to do, two things you don't want to do. One, you don't want to miss deadline, and two, you don't want to be over the word count that's been assigned to you. So I'm just
assign your word count.
Yeah, they will tell you exactly how long it has to be. And if they tell you 1,200 words, you might be able to come in at 1,275 words, but come in at 1,500 and it will be sent back to you.
They're strict about that, huh?
Yeah. Because they have a spot for it.
What if you say you have 1,100 words?
You're fine, but you can't come in at 600 words.
Okay,
right.
That makes sense. Now, when you have a deadline, I'm focusing on this book basically, but do you discipline yourself every day to write? And do you set yourself goals when you're on a deadline, especially with a novel?
It's a hard thing, isn't it? When you've been writing for a while, you get a sense of the progress that you're making. And there are some days when that progress doesn't seem to be advancing at the pace that you would like, but you still know how much time you have left, and you still have a sense of what can be accomplished in that time. So for me, this was a very comfortable book in the sense that I was able to do the research, feel comfortable about the research, and write a chapter. For example, about the fire and when the fire started and how long the fire started, while referring to my notes and my research over here. Unlike Hung Out to Die, which was a fiction book, which was more sitting down and having the character do something and say something and then move to something else. So the process was different for this book, and it mirrored more of writing a nonfiction article for a magazine or newspaper online.
So you're totally in your zone. You're in your comfort zone completely. Are you currently working on something now?
I am. I've switched to a new series, and I'm a book and a half in on the new series, which I hope to see out relatively soon. I still want to do some playing and jigging and going in and rethinking, but it's coming.
Now, I always ask my authors this: when you sat down and started book one, you already knew it was going to be a series, or it just developed into a series while you were writing it?
With my first book, even though there is not a second book yet, in my mind, I know what the crime would be for the second book and where it would occur and things like this. And so I did that with this one as well. Even though I was working on the first one, I knew if there was a second one, what it would be. And then I just started to work away at the second one.
And continuing the series, are they going to have the same characters in all the books? Oh, nice. And do you know how many books?
I do not.
That's okay. I have a 8-book series. I had no idea it was going to go on that long. No idea at all. So that's good. You might have 20 books. You never know.
I think that, to your point, I don't know if it works like this for you, but I think it's, you get drawn into something and before you know it, you're in it and you just go with it. And then if you get drawn somewhere else, I will move to that somewhere else.
Yeah. Do your characters talk to you, especially when you're writing a fiction book? Not historical fiction. The book that you've just written is based on true events or something that happened. But if you're writing just pure fiction, is the series you write in, the book one that you have, is this pure fiction mystery?
Yes.
So do the characters talk to you?
No.
Oh, they don't. See, mine do. I get a kick out of it. And that's why I never know how long my series are going to be, because while they continue to talk to me, then I have to continue to write. And book 8, they were done. So, but I don't know if they are done because they keep talking.
Okay. I think I get to know the characters. I feel like they take on a reality of their own. And I don't know if this happens to you, but when I wrote Hung Out to Die, I had a fairly strong sense of my main character. My main character is an American. He's from Santa Barbara and he ends up in Nova Scotia. And as I say in the book, he has this little personality quirk. He's a psychopath, but he's not the violent, gruesome, nasty kind. He's the kind that gets up every day and goes off to work and goes home at night and has a cup of coffee. And, you wouldn't know he was a psychopath unless you looked very carefully. But there were other characters in that book that when I started to write it, I said, okay, well, this character will take this form and shape. And all of a sudden that character is doing things and saying things. And I'm thinking, no, where'd this come from? That's not right. But
do you continue on with what the character is doing, or do you take control?
No, I let them go where they want.
Yeah, okay. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
If I try and take control, it sounds fake. Because I have tried to reel a character in saying, I don't want you to do this. But then when I read it back, I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right. So then I go back to what the character is trying to tell me.
And I think, too, it's also kind of about trusting your process. And so that if something is telling me that the character should be saying this or wearing this or doing this, then somewhere back there, it's making sense.
Yeah. Do you plot your books?
Between plotter and pantster, I'm probably
middle.
Yeah. For Conflagration, I was closer to a plotter because I was very nervous about the accuracy element. For Hung Out to Die, I was probably a little closer to pantser, but I do a bit of both.
Okay, that's probably a safe place to be. I'm a pantster 100%. I tried plotting a book and it was a disaster. So, that's when I was saying about the characters. I tried to make a character do something that she would never, ever do. And she told me. So I says, okay, I'm never going to plot again because they just don't listen to me anyways. I'm seeing some questions here about writing. I'm going to go scroll back up because, hold on. I saw one from Lori Chasco. She's asking, what was the hardest part of your research? I can't find it now, but I did see it. Oh, here it is, Lori. What was the hardest part of your research? And I'm assuming for the book, Conflagration.
I think there were two elements that were hardest for me. One of the elements was very particular to this book. So the court case was extremely well documented, but it was documented in French, of course, because that's the language that would have been spoken in a French colony in 1734. So they've been translated into English, but you're taking Old French and you're trying to translate it into 21st century English, and there were just some things that just didn't make sense, and you had to go back and spend a lot of time trying to figure out, am I interpreting this correctly? The other thing that was the most difficult was things like the coffee stuff. So it wasn't so much what was said in court, what did the judge ask, what did the witness say? It was more, at one point my character puts on boots and I thought, oh yeah, right. Did they wear boots in 1734? What did they look like? And when you look it up, you get the French court boots that the king would have worn with the pointy toes and the jewels and everything.
Not what you wanted.
Not in the mud in Montreal in 300 years ago. And the journalism kind of foundation is that when you are reporting on something, you get every fact confirmed by two sources, which was relatively straightforward for the court processes, but not as straightforward for other things. There was something that I read. The woman at the heart of this story, Angelique, she was eventually hung, and subsequently she was set on fire in the main square in Montreal as punishment for her crime. And one of the things that I read said that there was some sense that might have just been a little bit of meanness, because she would have been converted to Catholicism. And at that time, the Catholic religion would have said that your body and your soul had to be intact to get into heaven. So by burning her, they would have been condemning her to a life without being able to ever get into heaven. And I had a hard time trying to confirm that. I had one source, and I spent a lot of time trying to find another source, because I did think it spoke to the attitude towards her in Montreal at the time.
Interesting. You must have found out all kinds of interesting facts researching this book. That's one thing I would love if I ever wrote historical fiction, is just the stuff. I mean, you walk away so much smarter. You
learn stuff that and the stuff you learn often surprises you, right?
Yeah.
When I do book readings, I have a quiz called Justice in 1734. And there's 10 questions, and they're questions like, were lawyers allowed in a courtroom in New France in 1734?
I mean, things we just take for granted every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to, like we said earlier, you have to question almost every sentence and make sure it's accurate. Well done for taking on that challenge. Well done. Do you write your own blurbs for your books? And the reason I'm asking is because Robin's asking, do you have a problem writing a blurb?
I do write my own blurbs. My publisher will sometimes change the blurb or edit the blurb or make a recommendation on the blurb. I'm a little less intimidated by the blurb because it does have a little bit of the communications element to it, as if you were writing a brochure for a company or an organization. What I did find difficult or unusual was the synopsis, that there seemed to be very kind of not strict, but there seemed to be rules and approaches for how do you write a synopsis. And not knowing that, I broke the rules. And so some people loved the way I broke the rules, and other people were absolutely mortified that I broke the rule. And so there are elements to the process of getting a book published that were very new to me. The blurb was not the one. Now, that said, I get very confused because there's a blurb, there's a tagline, there's a log line, there's a pitch, and it's like, oh dear Lord, spare
For
me.
me, when I talk about the blurb, it could be the synopsis too, because whenever I say the blurb, it's a description on the back of the book.
Yeah.
Some people call it a blurb, some people call it a synopsis. The tagline is usually on the front, on the very top. But when I'm saying the blurb, and I'm sure Robin is too, it's a description on the back. Is that how you look at the blurb? Is what you say? Because some people would say the blurb is a quote from a review.
And this is part of the issue, right? Is that there's all these terms that are out there, and they don't necessarily mean the same thing to everybody.
They don't.
But they have now become part of the process of getting a book published or getting an agent to represent you. And so, yeah.
Yeah. For me, I mean, the blurb is what I mean by the description on the back of the book. I can write the whole book, no problem. When it comes to sitting down and writing those 250 words to describe this whole book, 80,000 words in the condensed format where you're not giving anything away, it's really hard. Really hard.
I think it is
too. Take me all day.
Yeah, and you've got to make it interesting enough without being cliched that people actually want to read it.
Yeah, and they want to keep reading it.
Yeah.
And the goal is, after they've read that blurb, synopsis, whatever you want to call it, they turn the book over and start reading the first page because you've now grabbed them with the blurb. That's the goal. Right, readers? I saw some other questions. I'm going to scroll real quick. Cassandra, I think this is the question. Nope, it's a character's book. We just do the writing. They tell us to. Okay, yep.
I think that's true.
Here's a question from Karen. How do you come up with your characters' names?
Oh, that's a really good question. In some cases, they come to me so that, this person feels like a Jane, or this person has to have a sexy name or something like this. Philippe Archambault had to be a French name that I could say, being an English speaker. It had to be a name that would have existed in 1734. And one that would have been, Philippe is common enough, I think similar enough to Philip, so that for people whose language wasn't French, they would still understand that name. But I spend a lot of time doing things like, what are common surnames in Quebec? What are common first names for men in Quebec?
In that time period.
Yeah, what are historical surnames for, right? And then you find the ones that resonate with you.
But even the food back then, everything they ate back then, they didn't have, pizza.
No, and they didn't have stoves to cook food. So how do you cook?
A fire pit, right?
Yeah, hearth, right?
Yeah. Incredible. Wow. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, a few more questions.
Absolutely.
I love getting questions from the readers here. Of course, I just messed up and clicked on the wrong thing. It was from... Oh, I like this one, though. Tina, your blurbs aren't bad. Thank you for that one. I got to pop that one up. Thank you. Cassandra says she's taken a journalism class in high school. I loved my journalism class in high school. It definitely helped me with our love of writing. Excellent. This has been a wonderful chat. I got a couple more questions before we wrap it up, and, of course, the giveaway. But fascinating career that you have had and continue to have. I want to ask you, and I ask all the authors this for a final question. If we have somebody, wants to be a published author, what advice would you give to them?
I think the advice that I would give is the advice that I try to give myself most days. And it's a double-barreled piece of advice. And that would be, first read, second write. So I think we are much better writers when we read, and I think we need to read in the things that we're writing in. And then we need to write, you know, that we can't think about writing or talk about writing or, you know, dream about writing. You actually have to sit down in front of the damn laptop and, you know, put your fingers on the keypad, and it doesn't matter whether you like it or whether you think it's good, you were writing.
Yeah. And I always tell myself, just get the bones of the story down. Go back and clean it up, add fill-ins, do whatever the book needs. And one of the things I do, and a lot of my readers know this, when I start writing, I don't look back. Until that book is finished, I do not look back at it. The only thing I might do is I might read the last paragraph of what I wrote, just to click in where I left off the story. But chapter 1, once it's written, does not get read again until I go back and do the reread. And that's for me.
I'm the same way. I want a draft before I start playing with the draft.
Yeah. And then, and that way I get a feel of where the story needs to build up, is empty, or if I've repeated myself. It's, for me, it works. I know some authors that works for them is they go back and they clean up as they go along. I can't do that. No. I would spend weeks cleaning up chapter 1. I just can't do it.
Well, and to your point, I'm not sure what I'm cleaning up at that point.
Yeah,
because by the time I get to the end of it, I may kill chapter 1 altogether and just start with the opening of chapter 2 or something. So I don't fuss too much with what's behind me. I'm looking forward to what's ahead.
Exactly. I agree with 100%. Your books, they're in Canada, paperback. In America, are they on Kindle Unlimited?
Yes.
They are. Okay, good to know. So we got Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, paperback, and working on the audio.
Yes.
Did leave the links in the text for the chat. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, donalee, is I'm not sure if you're on Facebook a lot, but my author page, I know there's questions here I missed. It's hard to get to them all. Feel free to, after the live, or whenever you have time, just go through the comments and
perfect.
Any questions you want to answer that we didn't get to, feel free to. You are doing a giveaway. And
I am indeed.
I'd like you to tell the readers what that is.
Well, I wanted to give away a copy of Conflagration, a signed copy, print copy of Conflagration.
Let's see the cover. There it is. It looks like a big book. How many pages?
It is 268 pages.
That's a good sized book.
Yeah.
And it will be signed by you.
Absolutely.
And we'll announce the winner in my Read More Books group tonight. I can tag you in the group.
Perfect.
I'll announce it on my author page. Do you have Facebook Messenger?
Yes, absolutely.
So the winner can just message you directly and they can give you your details. Will that work?
That would be great.
Okay, perfect. So we'll do that tonight, probably around 8 o'clock my time in California. And I'm also doing my giveaway, the $5 Amazon gift card. If you can share this video from my author page, share it to all your favorite groups, share it to your friends, whoever you want to share it to. But do tag me in your share so I know you shared it, and you will be in the drawing for the $5 Amazon gift card. donalee, this has been fantastic. Readers, thank you for the great questions. Thank you for joining us. I'll give you a second or two, donalee, to say the final word.
Look, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Anytime I get to talk about writing with people who read and write, it's a joy.
It is a joy. It is. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you back in the group. Thank you, donalee, so much. Have a great night. Bye.